I stood in my little kitchen, the cheap linoleum cold beneath my slippered feet, and held the phone to my ear. The low hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. My fingers, gnarled with a lifetime of work, tightened around the plastic. "Yes, that's right," I said into the receiver, my voice trembling but firm. "Cancel the order. I won't be needing the car keys after all. The final payment, the one for the new sedan. Cancel it." A pause stretched, a vast echoing chasm. My heart was a hummingbird trapped in my chest, beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The cold, hard memory of his voice was a stone in my stomach. The dealership representative on the other end of the line asked if everything was all right. I swallowed, the lump in my throat like a marble. I told him everything was just fine, that I had a change of heart, that it was my money and my decision. I ended the call. The silence in the house was deafening, the kind that only happens when you're alone. I walked over to the window, the morning sun casting a pale, weak light on the frosted glass. I watched my breath cloud the pain for a moment before it disappeared, just like everything else. He didn't want to see me. He said he wasn't even expecting me. So why should I show up with a present that would change his life? I wasn't a fool, not anymore. I wasn't just some old woman to be taken advantage of, a bottomless bank account. The car keys would stay with the dealership, and he would learn that love has a price. He wasn't my son by blood, but he was my son in every way that mattered. When Lowell, my husband, passed away 5 years ago, Jareth was the only part of him I had left. The house felt too big, the silence too loud, but Jareth's grief, so raw and real, mirrored my own. We clung to each other, two ships lost at sea, finding an anchor in the other's pain. He was just a boy then, 18 years old and adrift, the world a cruel and indifferent place without his father. I stepped into the role of mother without a second thought, trading my golden years for years of late-night calls about car troubles, tuition bills, and a quiet sense of loneliness that settled deep in my bones. I made him dinner, even though he wasn't there to eat it. I left the porch light on every night, a silent promise he could always come home. We never spoke of Lowell directly. It was the unspoken understanding between us, a shared wound that was too painful to touch. I thought we were a team, a family. I was his foundation, his rock. I was the one who was always there, no matter what. I loved him with a fierceness that surprised even me, a love that grew from the fertile ground of shared loss. He was my whole world, the only thing I lived for, the only thing that gave my days meaning. But what I didn't know then was that he didn't feel the same way. What I didn't know was that our worlds had split long ago, and I was the only one still living in the past. The cracks started to show slowly, like a hairline fracture in a window pane. A bill he couldn't pay, a job he couldn't keep, a promise he broke. I always offered help, always had a checkbook ready. He never asked, but I knew. I always knew. He'd come over, his shoulders slumped, his eyes full of that familiar desperate look, and I would just write the check. He'd mumble his thanks, his eyes on the floor. I didn't care about the money. I cared about him. I just wanted to help him stand on his own 2 feet. This Christmas, I decided, was going to be the turning point. He'd been talking about a new life, a fresh start, a chance to get away from the small town that had swallowed his ambition whole. He had a chance at a new job, a real one, but he needed a way to get there. I had an idea. I had been saving for years, working extra shifts at the diner, selling some of my old furniture, even scrimping on groceries. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough. Enough for a down payment. Enough for a new car. A real one, a shiny one, with a new car smell and a clean slate. I called the dealership in the next town over, and they had just the thing, a used sedan, but it was practically new. I put a deposit down, paid the first few months, and arranged for the keys to be delivered to me on Christmas Eve, just in time for his visit. It would be my gift to him, a gesture of my love, a push into the future he deserved. It was the ultimate sacrifice, the last of my savings, but it was worth it. For him, the plan was perfect. I was going to surprise him. He thought I was just sending him money, a lump sum of a few $100s to help with the holiday. He didn't know I was bringing the car keys. I had it all planned out in my head. He would show up at the door expecting a quiet visit, and I would lead him outside. The car, adorned with a big red bow, would be sitting in the driveway. He would be shocked. He would hug me and tell me he loved me. We'd finally have that moment, that perfect movie moment that you see in the Christmas specials. I packed a small duffel bag with a few things, couple of sweaters, a book, and a little Christmas card. I wrote a long heartfelt note inside, telling him how much he meant to me. I had everything ready. I was about to call him to let him know I was on my way. But I stopped. I decided to wait. I wanted the surprise to be even better. I wanted it to be perfect. As I was about to call him, I heard a voice that was not my own, coming from the phone sitting on the counter. It was Jareth, and he wasn't talking to me. He was on speakerphone, talking to a friend. I couldn't help but listen. "Yeah, I'm headed over to Odessa's for the holidays," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "She's sending me a check. She's a great lady, but she's so out of it. She thinks I'm coming to see her. She doesn't know I'm going to see my buddies." My heart stopped. I felt a cold wave of nausea wash over me. I stood there frozen, listening to him talk about my love, my sacrifice, my gift, as if it was nothing, just a check from a bank, an obligation he had to fulfill. He wasn't coming to see me, he was just coming to get the money. He wasn't expecting me at all. I wasn't a mother. I was an ATM. I stood there listening to the conversation, the betrayal a bitter taste in my mouth. He wasn't just talking about not seeing me, he was talking about my life, about me. "She thinks I'm coming to see her," he said again, his voice tinged with what sounded like pity, or worse, mockery. "She's so disconnected, doesn't know what's going on in the world." He laughed, a short hollow sound. "I'm just gonna take the check, tell her I gotta get going, and then hit the road. Cassidy's waiting for me, we've got a party to get to. She has no idea. My stepmom has no idea." The words were like a physical blow, each one a hammer strike against the fortress of my love. All my hard work, all my sacrifices, all my hopes for a new beginning for us, it was all for nothing. I had been a fool, a naive, gullible old fool. He saw me as a means to an end. My gift, my magnificent surprise was just an inconvenience. I didn't just hear his words, I saw them. I saw him laughing, a mocking smile on his face. I saw him taking the money, my money, and going off to party with his friends. The car, the shiny new car, was just a fantasy, a daydream I had foolishly believed would come true. The cold reality of the situation washed over me, leaving me shivering. The keys were still with the dealership. I had paid the first few installments, but the final payment was due on Christmas Eve. I had a choice. I could go through with it and give him the car, or I could stop. I could take back what was mine. I could make him feel just a fraction of the pain I was feeling right now. I could make him understand that my love was not a bottomless well. I could cancel the car keys, and that's exactly what I did. I picked up the phone again, my hands shaking. I didn't care about the deposit. I didn't care about the lost money. I just wanted to get even. I wanted to teach him a lesson. I wanted him to hurt. I called the dealership and told them to cancel the whole thing. The keys weren't coming, and he wasn't getting a car. He showed up the next morning, a half-hour late, smelling faintly of cheap beer. His smile was a bit too wide, his hug a bit too quick. "Hey, Odessa," he said, his voice a little too loud. "Sorry I'm late. The traffic was insane." He lied. I knew he was lying. I had been up all night, tossing and turning, rehearsing what I was going to say, how I was going to confront him. But when I saw him standing in my living room, looking so much like Lowell with his lanky frame and tired eyes, the words caught in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to say them. Instead, I just gave him a tight-lipped smile. "That's okay, Jareth," I said. "I'm just glad you're here." The air between us was thick with unsaid things. He fidgeted, looking around the room, avoiding my gaze. I wanted to scream, to ask him why he felt the need to lie to me, to tell him I knew everything, to ask him why he was here if he didn't want to be. But I didn't. I just stood there, my heart a heavy stone in my chest. He picked up the Christmas card I had left on the coffee table and opened it. He read the long, heartfelt note I had written. I watched his face, searching for a flicker of emotion, but I saw nothing. He just smiled, a small, sad smile, and put the card back down. "Thanks, Odessa," he said. "That's so nice of you." The words felt empty, a hollow echo in the silent room. He didn't know. He didn't know what he had lost. He didn't know what I had taken away. And I didn't have the guts to tell him. Not yet. He brought up the new job, but only in passing. He was talking about getting out of the small town, about a new start. He mentioned a place in Ohio, a factory job with good pay. I asked him how he was going to get there. He shrugged, looking away. I'll figure it out, he said, his voice a little too casual. A buddy is driving a couple of us there. I just gotta get the cash for gas and some food. And maybe a place to stay for a while. He was asking me for the money, the very money he had just talked about wasting. The very money that I had just taken back. My blood ran cold. He had no shame. He had no idea what he was doing. He was just taking. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. I didn't see the boy who had sat on my porch swing with me, crying over his father. I didn't see the young man who had promised to take care of me, to be there for me. I just saw a user, a liar, a man who would take everything I had and give nothing in return. I felt a surge of anger. The last of my love for him, the last of my patience, was gone. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him what I had done, to tell him he was getting nothing, not a car, not money, not a new start. But I held my tongue. I knew if I told him he would just see it as a punishment, as a cruel trick, and I didn't want him to think I was cruel. I wanted him to see that his own actions had consequences. I wanted him to learn. I wanted him to know that what he did was wrong. I wanted him to feel the pain. I excused myself from the room. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a glass of water. My hands were shaking. I heard the front door close and I looked out the window. He was gone. He had just left. He hadn't even said goodbye. I stood there, watching his car pull out of the driveway, the old pickup truck kicking up gravel as it sped away. I felt a pang of regret, a flicker of doubt. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I should have just given him the money. Maybe I should have just told him the truth. But then I remembered his words, his laugh, his casual dismissal of me, and the regret was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I sat down at the kitchen table and put my head in my hands. The phone rang. It was Maribel, my best friend. She asked me how Jareth was. I told her he had just left. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, Odessa, you need to know something. He's not going to a party. He's in trouble. I didn't believe her. I thought she was just trying to make me feel guilty. She said he'd been struggling with a crippling debt that he was afraid to tell me about. A debt that his father left behind. She said he was ashamed, that he didn't want to be a burden on me. She said he was a good kid, that he was just scared. He felt like he had to take care of it all on his own, she said. He couldn't stand the thought of you being burdened with his problems. He didn't want you to worry. My mind reeled. I felt a sudden, sharp pain, a deeper, more devastating pain than before. My anger was gone, replaced by a terrible, gut-wrenching dread. I had made a terrible mistake. I had punished him for a crime he didn't commit. I had pushed him away when he needed me the most. I had taken away his only chance at a new life. I looked at the phone, my heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to call him, to tell him I was sorry, to tell him to come back. But I couldn't. It was too late. He was gone. The conversation with Maribel ended, but her words echoed in the empty house. He's not going to a party. He's in trouble. I paced the floor, my mind racing. What kind of trouble? What did she mean? My initial anger and sense of righteous indignation had completely vanished, replaced by a cold fear that seized my very core. I saw his face again, not the casual, dismissive one from this morning, but the tired, haunted look I had seen so many times before. The debt, the shame, the loneliness, it all made sense now. He wasn't a liar, he was just a scared kid, a young man trying to be a man, trying to take care of himself and failing, but too proud to admit it. He was trying to protect me. I had misjudged him completely. The keys, the shiny new car, the chance at a new life, I had taken it all away from him, believing I was teaching him a lesson, but I wasn't teaching him anything. I was just hurting him, and in doing so, I was hurting myself. The phone rang again, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Maribel. Her voice was frantic, a panicked whisper. Odessa, you have to get to the hospital. It's Jareth. There was an accident. He was trying to hitch a ride, and the car veered off the road. He's been hit, Odessa. He's been hit. The words hit me like a physical blow. The world spun around me. My knees buckled. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the tinny sound of Maribel's voice still echoing from the small speaker. The car keys. The car I had cancelled. It would have protected him. It would have saved him. And now he was gone. I ran to my car, my hands fumbling with the keys, the image of his face, his sad, lonely face in my mind. The betrayal was gone. The anger was gone. All I felt was a terrible, suffocating dread. I had ruined everything. I had cost him his life. I sped down the highway, the old sedan I'd been driving for a decade, struggling to keep up with my frantic pace. The blur of the world outside the windows was a dizzying mess of regret. My mind was a terrifying highlight reel of all the times Jareth had tried to show me his pain, and all the times I had misread it as selfishness. The phone call in the kitchen wasn't a betrayal, it was a conversation with a friend, a confession of his plans, a weary, almost apathetic admission that he was just trying to get through the holiday so he could get to the new job he'd been given a chance at. He wasn't coming to get a check to party. He was coming to get a check to pay off his debt. My anger, my fear, my loneliness, it had all twisted the truth, poisoned my mind, and now it had cost him. The hospital felt like a cage. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The air was too sterile. I walked down the long, silent hallway, each step a crushing weight on my heart. I saw him in the room, lying in the bed, his head bandaged. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the machine beside his bed. He was awake, his eyes open, but they were empty. He didn't see me at first. He just stared at the ceiling, his face a pale mask of exhaustion. I walked over to the bed and sat down in the chair beside him. He looked at me then, his eyes so much like his father's filling with tears. "Odessa," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "I didn't want to bother you." The words were a knife in my heart. He didn't want to bother me. I had a car for him, a new life for him, a chance for him to get away from all this. I had a gift for him, and I had taken it away. He told me everything. He talked about his father's death, but not in the way I remembered. He talked about his father's hidden debt, a secret his father had carried to his grave, a debt that Jareth, a boy of 18, had inherited. He had been trying to pay it off for years, working 2 jobs, selling off everything he owned, but it was like a black hole, sucking everything he had into its abyss. He was drowning. He didn't tell me because he was ashamed, because he didn't want to see me, a woman who had already lost so much, burdened with his problems. He didn't want me to think he was a failure, a user. He just wanted to be a good son. I listened, my heart breaking as he poured out his soul. I saw the shame, the fear, the loneliness, all the things he had been hiding from me, from the world. I saw the love, the deep, abiding love he had for me, a love that was so much bigger, so much deeper than I had ever dared to hope. I had been so wrong, so terribly, horribly wrong. He wasn't a user, he was a hero. He was just a boy trying to be a man, trying to do the right thing, trying to protect the people he loved, even at the cost of his own happiness. I reached out and took his hand. He flinched at my touch, then slowly, his fingers entwined with mine, his grip tight, desperate. I looked at him, my heart aching with a pain that was both new and terribly familiar. It was the same pain I had felt when Lowell passed away. The same fear of being alone. I had been so scared of losing him, so terrified of being a widow with no one left to love, that I had tried to buy his love, to force him to need me. I was the one who was scared. I was the one who was selfish. I was the one who had made a terrible mistake. I told him everything. I told him about the car, about the keys, about the deposit I had lost. I told him about the phone call, about what I had heard, about my betrayal. I told him I was so scared of being alone, so terrified of losing him, that I had acted out of fear, out of a desperate, ugly need to prove that he needed me. I told him I was sorry. I told him I was so sorry. He just looked at me, his eyes full of a love that was so pure, so deep, that it made me cry. "Odessa," he said, his voice a soft whisper. "I didn't need a car. I just needed you." The words were a balm to my aching heart, a healing hand on my wound. He didn't want the keys. He just wanted a mother. He just wanted me. I reached out and pulled him into a hug. I held him close, my son, my boy, the only one I had left. I held him, and I cried, and he cried too. And in that moment, the keys, the car, the debt, it all disappeared. All that mattered was us. All that mattered was that we were together. The nurse came in and told us it was time for him to get some rest. I leaned back in the chair, my hand still in his, and watched him sleep. The hospital room was silent, the steady beep of the machine a comforting rhythm. The cold fear was gone, replaced by a quiet, warm sense of peace. The next day we walked out of the hospital, not to a new car but to a bus stop. We sat there together, not in silence but in comfortable conversation. We talked about his new job, about his debt, about his fears. We talked about my life, about my loneliness, about my own fears. We didn't solve everything, not right away, but we started to. The bus came. We got on it. It wasn't a new car, but it was a new beginning. We were going home, not to the old house, not to the old life, but to a new life, a new beginning, a new future that we would build together. The car keys, the ones I had canceled, had been a punishment. They had been a symbol of my anger, my pain, my betrayal. But now, in the stillness of the bus, surrounded by strangers, they were a symbol of something else entirely. They were a symbol of the truth, of the pain we had shared, of the love that had brought us back together. They were the key to a new life. Not the life I had planned for him, but the life we would build together, a life that was honest and real and full of love, a life without secrets. We were finally free.